Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wrestling Academy, a podcast all about wrestling history with no linear timeline or trackable syllabus. So if you're a lifelong fan or you're brand new, this is the podcast for you. I am your headmaster. My name is Michael Classic.
Hello, and I am Samee Junio, your Homecoming King. And guess what, everybody? I would really love to put my friend, your Headmaster Michael, through a table. And we set that as an incentive for 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you're not watching us, go over to youtube.com @Wrestling Academy Pod and follow us. So we're just that much closer to our big goal of smashing Michael through a table.
Look, when we get this specific with how to get to the YouTube page to subscribe, you know we're serious. So if you can get over there and you can hit subscribe, we would really appreciate it. And our gift to you will be, at 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to go through a table, for real.
For real, sis. For a long time, I've been saying, I will spear you through a table. Have we stumbled upon any maneuver or spot that you would like to suggest to me to put you through a table?
I think after the month-long exploration of Mick Foley, what I personally would love to see you do is an elbow drop off the turnbuckle onto concrete.
Okay, great. AKA a hip buster. The only move that's named for the damage it does to the person who's doling it out.
Me personally, I think a sweet elbow drop would be awesome. Just keep it classic. No need to reinvent it. No need to go crazy. But if you wanted to do an Edge style spear, I'm not opposed to that either, especially after the research we did this week.
Hell yeah.
But Samee, we are hot on the trail of the elusive Ween Kid, the mysterious phantom in the background of every single shot of Royal Rumble 2008. And ever since me and Samee saw Ween Kid, we have been on a worldwide search to try to figure out #who is Ween Kid. So if you have any tips or clues on how we can find Ween Kid, please check out any of our socials. We've got pin posts where we break it all down. If you have a tip, please hit us up on any of those socials, or you can go to our website, wrestlingacademy.university, and submit an anonymous tip there, or you can call our anonymous Ween Kid tip line. That number is 708-669-4512. Things are heating up, and the deeper into this investigation we go, the more I need clues to keep going.
We need Ween tips. This person has haunted us throughout our entire first semester, which we are, in fact, wrapping up today. That's right. Today is our last episode of the month of Mick, our month-long exploration of Mick Foley. Michael, what's up with you, girl?
To answer your question, Samee, I am so ready to go because we've gone through all three phases of Foley. Yeah. And I feel like these feuds that we picked out today, he's not playing a character. These are just Mick Foley, the man, has gotten into some real feuds. And I was really excited to get into, we're at the twilight years of Mick Foley's active in-ring career. And it was really nice just to check in. And I think just from doing this research on Mick Foley and doing as much research for Wrestling Academy as we've done, the stories I gravitate towards the most are those Terry Funk, old gunslinger, last run kind of storylines. And Mick Foley, he's got at least 2 of those on his hip, and he's about to go for him today. And we're gonna dive right in. How about you? How did you feel?
I feel really good. When we were communicating during the research of this whole month, and then this episode in particular, I think we both had moments where we had to admit to each other that we were feeling particularly emotional. And there is just something about the raw Mick Foley after all of this time that did leave me feeling actually raw too. Just in the sense of I just feel sobbing and being he did this for us. He did this for us. The whole time.
I think those same feelings that you have, Foley echoes them in the storylines we're about to get into.
So let's dive in, shall we?
Where we last left off, we were in 1999, 2000. Mick Foley had been feuding with The Rock. Just from listening to Mick Foley's podcast and hearing his interviews, he was really talking about around this time, all of the injuries he sustained throughout his entire career have really started to stack up. And so by the time we get to the 2000s, his body is really hurting. And he gets into one absolutely wild feud with Triple H. It ends in a Hell in a Cell match where he fights Triple H, and the stipulation is more or less, if I am not able to beat you for the title, I am putting my career on the line. Mick Foley loses that match at Hell in a Cell. From there, I think that's where he starts to transition out of being a full-time active WWE competitor. And he has a run of being the commissioner of Monday Night Raw. So he's the on-screen person who's booking all the matches and stuff like that. But something that was happening in Mick's real life around this time was in 1999, he wrote a memoir called Have a Nice Day that was a New York Times bestseller. And he got the bug to start writing more books. So I think by the time we get to 2001, he had published 4 books, 2 autobiographies, 2 children's books, and they were wildly successful. And he was getting on the Today Show. He was talking about how he had this moment where he had written this book. He was on the Today Show and he was promoting a Halloween book. And Katie Couric was just so pleased with him as a writer, took a very cute picture with Mick Foley and his family. And one of his children was in a little pumpkin costume and Katie Couric was holding it. And to him, what he said in the interview was a lot of people up until that point said the greatest thing I had ever done was get thrown off of a Hell in a Cell. But here I am on the Today Show because of a book that I wrote. And a journalist that I really respect is like wanting to take pictures of me and my family for Halloween. And he was like, that up until the point was the greatest thing I had ever done. And so I think he was really starting to feel this resentment towards wrestling and everything that he had done. I think we could both agree that he had done everything that was asked of him. And it had a great physical demand on his body and his mind. And I think by the time he gets to 2001, he's realizing that he has so many more gifts to offer than just hardcore deathmatch style wrestling. And he wants to take some time to really try to be an author for reals. So in 2001, he goes on an indefinite hiatus for real from the WWE so he can focus on being a writer. And he really enjoys the process. He's having fun, kicking back, relaxing, and he's really enjoying being a writer. He's working on his debut novel called Tatum Brown, and he's having such a good time that he's really not sure if he's even going to return to wrestling ever again.
I mean, sure.
Right?
At 36, you have injuries from your workplace that are now like boiling up and just your body is ruined. You've been called hideous. She's all thatted already. Like,
you've had your ear ripped off. You've been set on fire.
Yeah.
And you're 36 and you think to yourself, you know what? People like that I'm a writer too. So maybe I'm just going to take a break for a while. So he's having fun doing that. But then a few years later in 2003, he starts to get the itch to wrestle again. So this is where our story begins. June 23rd, 2003. We are at the iconic Madison Square Garden, and the on-screen commissioner at the time is Stone Cold Steve Austin, and he brings out Mick Foley for a special surprise. And Mick Foley jumps back, being like, "Are you going to give me a Stone Cold Stunner?" And Stone Cold starts laughing. He's like, "No. We came out because this is Mick Foley Appreciation Night." And they have this whole big thing where they have every member of the old school ECW roster who is now currently working for the WWE. So like the Dudley Boys and Rob Van Dam and Al Snow, all these guys from his past come out. Tommy Dreamer, of course, comes out holding a framed title belt of the Hardcore Championship. And as you'll recall, Mick Foley was the very first Hardcore Champion. And this was a division that was created just to honor him. And they played this very beautiful tribute to Mick Foley, and it shows his greatest highlights, all his stuff. They even sprinkle in some clips from his 1985 film that he made in high school called The Loved One, where he was Dude Love for the very first time.
Brought to you by the Brothers Penis.
Brought to you by the Brothers Penis. Weirdly enough, not there for the... Not there for the ceremony. Yeah. So we come back and Mick Foley cuts a really sweet retirement speech where he thanks the fans, and he talks about how 20 years ago he used to hitchhike from his house to this very same arena so he could watch WWF shows, and that inspired him to want to become a wrestler too. And here he is 20 years later, and people are chanting his name, and people just are so grateful for the work that he did. He wants to thank the fans for like letting him entertain them all these years, and he's saying goodbye for now, but he hopes to be back again someday.
Oh,
very sweet send off. So Mick Foley is leaving. He's backstage. Up next, we have two members of Triple H's villainous faction, Evolution, which you'll remember is Triple H, Ric Flair, Dave Bautista, and a 23-year-old fresh-faced Randy Orton. So Ric Flair and Randy Orton are in a tag team match. They end up losing, and so they're super pissed off. They come backstage and they see Mick Foley hanging out, and Mick Foley turns around as they're crossing him in the hall, and he's like, "Oh, hey, great match tonight, guys." And like, "Oh, great match." And they immediately just start throwing haymakers on Mick Foley. And this turns into an all-out brawl between Mick Foley and Randy Orton, where Randy picks up the hardcore championship that's framed and he fucking breaks it over Mick Foley's head and it shatters. He's throwing, they're like fighting each other. They fight out into a concrete stairwell.
Yeah.
And Randy grabs Mick Foley's head, slams his head into the wall, throws him onto the ground. And then when Foley's on the ground, like on his hands and knees, Randy just runs through and does his punt kick directly to Mick Foley's face. And Foley rolls down these concrete stairs and they all just leave him there bleeding.
And I thought I didn't take compliments too well.
But Samee, Mick Foley is not seen again for 7 months. So everyone's like, oh, they just straight up killed Mick Foley, and that's how he retires from the WWE. Nobody had any idea that he was coming back. So this was a horrifying thing to see 23-year-old Randy Orton do.
I can't believe they did that on his Mick Foley Appreciation Day. How fucking rude.
Another thing that's really weird about this episode of Monday Night Raw is completely separate from the Mick Foley getting thrown down the stairs thing. This is also the same Raw where Triple H and Kane have a one-on-one fight where if Kane wins, he wins the title, but if Kane loses, Kane has to lose his mask, Samee. This is the episode where he loses and is forced to relinquish his mask, and this is where we see unmasked Kane for the very first time. I'm going to pop in a picture. Samee, what are our thoughts about maskless Kane?
If I had that going on under a mask, I would never agree to be in a mask versus title match at all. I would never agree to do anything that means take off. If you lose, you take off your mask and expose yourself to have half of a Shirley Temple wig on your head.
I believe it is called a skullet, where there's nothing up front but that same party in the back. And that's kind of what Kane has. Ugh. He's got a bunch of soot on his face. It's very strange. I don't know. For me, it was very I remember seeing this as a kid, and I remember it being very disappointing because they built it up since 1997 that this guy's a hideous freak. And then when he takes off the mask, I remember being like, well, he looks like a guy. He doesn't seem as freakish as what everybody's been saying for 6 years straight. So I don't know what's going on here.
Well, he ends up being the biggest fear of all, which is a Republican.
Back to Mick Foley, back to Randy Orton. So as we said, Foley is gone for 7 months, and in that intervening time, Randy Orton, as part of the Evolution faction, these guys are terrorizing the WWE. And anybody who's a fan of the WWE at all knows that in 2003, that is part of Triple H's reign of terror, where he was just such a backstage nightmare and really made it so that he and the people around him were in a very strong position. And that translated to in storyline, Evolution was a very dominant faction. And by the time we get to December 15th, 2003, all 4 members of Evolution are holding gold. So we've got Batista and Ric Flair. They're the tag team champions. Triple H, he's the world heavyweight champion. And Randy Orton is the Intercontinental champion. Mick Foley, he's back in the mix. He becomes a co-general manager with his old WCW boss, Eric Bischoff. What is important is that Mick Foley and Eric Bischoff at this time are not getting along. And I think Eric Bischoff, as sort of a power play, is trying to manipulate Mick Foley. And so on the December 15th episode, he basically says, like, look, Mick, I love that you're here being the general manager with me, but I think the fans all want you to become the hardcore legend we know you to be. So what do you say tonight we do one more match? And Mick Foley's like, no way. I haven't wrestled in 4 years. There's no way I'm stepping back in the ring. And Eric Bischoff goes like, well, you didn't hear my terms. My terms are one more match. And if you win, I will quit the WWE tonight. But if you lose, then you have to quit the WWE tonight. Your opponent will be Randy Orton, the guy who threw you down the stairs, will be able to get some revenge on him. And Mick Foley senses that this is all a huge setup. He's been around the block a few times. And Samee, he says, let me tell you how this is going to go. You're going to, I'm going to be doing the match, then Evolution's going to come out, and they're going to kick my ass, and then I'm going to lose, and then I'm going to have to quit. There's no way I'm going to fall for that trap. But I will accept under 3 conditions. 1, both you, Eric Bischoff, and the rest of Evolution banned from ringside. I want my main man, Earl Hebner, to be the referee. And then 3, I have never won the Intercontinental Championship. So when I do this match tonight and I win, I'm going to pick up the belt I was never able to get.
Oh, wow.
And Eric Bischoff reluctantly agrees. And all night, the energy's buzzing. You could see Foley, he's trying to get back into it, right? He's talking to people who have retired and come back, and he's doing it. And then as this is happening, the tension is starting to ratchet up for Randy Orton, where he's like, okay, I've never faced anybody like Mick Foley before. This guy could get pretty nuts. I don't even know what I'm in for here. Meanwhile, everybody on commentary is just like, oh, finally, Mick Foley, he is going to save us from Eric Bischoff. We need Mick Foley to win this. Gets to the end of the night. Randy Orton comes out. He's pacing back and forth. He's nervous. He doesn't know what to expect. And then Mick Foley's music hits. He walks down to the ring. He's got his flannel on. He's focused. He rolls into the ring, staring daggers ready to go. They ring the bell. And then Mick Foley rolls out of the ring. He's trying to get himself hyped up. He doesn't know what to do. He's pacing back and forth. The crowd, they start chanting, Foley, Foley, Foley. He gets to the top of the ramp. Maybe he's about to make a running start into the ring and start it that way. And then he takes a step back. And then he takes another step back. And then he takes several more steps back. And then he turns around and he leaves the arena. Everybody around ringside is looking exactly like you are, Samee. They're all super confused. Randy Orton's like, what the fuck? And he rolls out of the ring. We cut to backstage. You see Mick Foley. He walks into his general manager's office. He comes back out with his suitcase and his coat and all his stuff. And he just starts quietly walking out of the arena. Eric Bischoff pops up to be like, you realize if you leave the arena, you are effectively quitting the WWE, right? Foley, he doesn't say anything, looking really shamefully. He just walks right past him. He gets to the exit of the arena and Randy Orton's there to stop him. Hey man, where are you going? Are you leaving? And then he gets closer. He looks in Mick Foley's eyes and he's like, wait, are you scared? Are you about to cry? Legends don't get scared, Mick. Cowards do. And then he hawks the biggest loogie on Mick Foley's face. It hits him right in the cheek. It is so, they zoom in. It is so gross, stomach churning stuff. It really I retched when I saw it. It's that disgusting. At that point, Mick throws all his stuff on the ground, wipes the spit off of his face.
Ugh.
The crowd is chanting Foley, Foley, Foley. And then with all of that happening, Mick Foley looks down and he walks out of the arena. Mick Foley has quit the WWE. Samee, pretty rough night for our boy.
I think he needed more stipulations. Also, Randy has to be blindfolded. Also, he's got to put a shirt on. We can't wrestle against a 10-pack. That's just not fair.
Young Randy Orton really had too many abs. He had a disconcerting amount of abs.
3 to 4.
And that's why he was able to hawk that loogie so effectively. Just the core strength. He was able to summon.
I don't love that he spit at all, and I don't love that the zoom in was so quick. Kudos to that camera person's reflexes, but also fuck you, dog.
And they had switched to HD at that point, so it was a crisp lug on his cheek, dude. It was so good, so nasty.
I'm sick right now. In the previous episode, or a previous episode, I asked you if you would go into the ring if somebody with a chainsaw was in there, right? Or maybe you asked me. And I said I would probably wait it out until the chainsaw was taken away, but you said you would leave and go have dinner. And while you were explaining how Mick left, it kind of, would that be your vibe when you walked away? Or would you be like, okay, whatever? No pouting, full chest, you're walking out.
I can't fault Mick Foley at all, because if it was no. Hey, Mike, you have to step into the ring with Randy Orton, I would almost certainly do the exact same thing. And I think I would be really embarrassed and I would just be leaving and I have my bag and everyone's like, what, Mike, are you crying? Are you afraid? I was like, no, I left something in my car. I have to get to my car really fast. I have to go. And they're like, we know you're leaving. We know you're running away. I was like, no, you don't understand. I can't wrestle if I don't have the CDs in my car. Then you'd hear me get my car and peel
Tires,
out. Yeah.
great.
So you would just hear, yeah. So Here's the thing. I would be even more of a coward than everybody's claiming Mick Foley was. But Samee, unfortunately, because he walked out, he has been fired and he is no longer employed by the WWE. Mick Foley is gone. It's sad to see our hero go out like this, but things are looking pretty good for the Intercontinental Champion, Randy Orton. He enters the Royal Rumble. And so January 25th, 2004, we are at the Royal Rumble. Randy Orton comes in second. He stacks up 5 eliminations. And by the time we get to the 21st entrant, which is a wrestler named Test, you might remember Test from our very first episode. He was part of the corporation. He was also in an on-screen relationship with the boss's daughter, Stephanie, before she switched allegiances and married Triple H instead.
Oopsie-daisy.
He's supposed to come out. His music hits, everybody looks, and nobody comes out to the ring. And it plays for a while. It cuts backstage, and you just see Test like a log, knocked out on the floor. There's a referee standing over him being like, he appears to be knocked out. I don't know. And you're like, yeah, no shit, dude. Like, we can all see him knocked out. So the commissioner, Stone Cold Steve Austin, he comes rolling out. He sees Test on the ground, and he's like, well, I say. What seems to be going on here?
Our favorite Texas alligator.
Our favorite Texas alligator. But he's yelling at somebody around a corner, and he's just like, why did you do this? Why did you knock this guy out? Like, what's going on? Okay, well, I don't have a 21st competitor. So guess what? You're in the Royal Rumble now, and we don't know who he's yelling at. It cuts to the ring. Everybody looks a little bit confused. And then you hear that glorious car crash noise, and Mick Foley storms to the ring, and he just has his target set directly on Randy Orton. He slides in the ring, just starts peeling away at Randy Orton, and there's a part, like, he's hitting him, he beats his ass into the corner, he beats him to the ground, and he is just laying in these punches. And the commentator, Jim Ross, I felt like he kind of briefly turned into Samee for a second, because he says this line, look at Foley taking his forearms and his fists to the pretty face of Randy Orton.
Look, there's going to be a little bit more of commentary, really just highlighting Randy's looks later on. And you know what? You're not wrong, and they're not wrong. He was a pretty guy.
23-year-old Randy Orton, everybody, that is so funny just to hear these 50-year-old commentators all just drooling over this guy being like, God, what a hottie, what a hunk.
I mean, he's oiled up. He's hardly wearing any clothes.
He's more abs than man. He's just abs and tribal tattoos. That's sort of 23-year-old Randy Orton at this point. But Mick Foley is not done beating Randy Orton's ass. He picks him up, throws him into the ropes, and then just does this diving clothesline, and they both go tumbling out of the ring. And Mick Foley has single-handedly cost Randy Orton his opportunity to get to the main event of WrestleMania. And everyone's like, oh, Foley, he screwed up his own chances. What an idiot. But if you look at it, Foley never wanted to win. He just wanted to screw over Randy Orton.
At any cost. At any cost. Even when they're both fully eliminated, Mick continues to try to murder Randy. He gets like the camera cords and tries to strangle him. And they totally pull focus from the entirety of Royal Rumble for at least, I don't know, 90 seconds times 2. 180 seconds until Randy runs off after Mick mandible claws Nunzio during his entrance.
Mick Foley is just a rabid dog during this entire Royal Rumble. He comes out and he just wants to punish Randy Orton, and I think he does pretty successfully. The next night on Monday Night Raw, Foley comes to the ring and he cuts a really earnest promo about everything that's been going on, and he basically says that over the course of his career, the reason why he was able to tap into that dark place within inside himself is he was able to tap into just a great well of hatred that he had just been carrying within him. And that allowed him to do the things that he was able to do. He said that when he took some time away to become a writer, it was the first time in his life he was able to make peace with that darker side of himself. He was able to let a lot of that hatred go. And when he came back, he just realized he didn't have that same killer instinct that he had all those years ago. And he says he really regrets what went down December 15th, not because he walked out of the building, but because he even agreed to do it in the first place. And he realized when he was standing there face to face, looking in Randy Orton's eyes, he says, Randy Orton's a great wrestler. And I realized I did not have the hatred possible to get the job done. I knew that I didn't have what it takes to dig deep inside that well of hatred to get the job done. And so I walked out. Granted, during this time, Randy Orton has also been making these political attack ads attacking Mick Foley's credibility in the intervening time. And so he's just been really raking Mick Foley over the coals since he walked out. And so I think he was like, so when I came out and I eliminated Randy Orton from the Royal Rumble, I understand that probably made him really upset. So he invites Randy down to the ring so they can hash it all out. And Randy Orton comes down with a head full of steam. He's been yelling at people all night about this loss. He was so mad. And he grabs the microphone and he's about to talk. And right before he can talk, Mick Foley goes, okay, whoa. Before we even start, I've got an idea. It's a little weird, but just kind of walk with me for a second. And Randy Orton's a little bit unsure. And he's like, so you remember when I walked out back in December and you spit in my face? You think you could do that again? Randy Orton, you can tell he's so weirded out. He has no idea what to do. I think he starts to laugh it off and he gets into his cocky jock Randy Orton thing. And he starts to raise it and be like, well, listen. And before he can even say anything, Mick Foley grabs the microphone and throws it out of his hand and just steps to him immediately into his face and goes like, listen here, you little bastard. I was spilling blood on 6 continents while you were latched onto your mother's breast. I've been listening to you run your mouth for 7 weeks. Now you listen to me. I am ordering you to spit in my face. And then he starts screaming, do it. It is. And then Randy gets so freaked out. He does this really weak spit. He's kind of like, it's like the most like little wiener thing you've ever seen. And Mick backs off and he starts laughing and he goes like, come on, Randy. I know you can do better than that. So I'm going to do what they say, and I'm going to turn the other cheek, and I want you to really go for it. And he gets the audience to really start egging Randy Orton on, to really goad him on. Randy hurls another tremendous loogie into Mick Foley's face. So then when he does it, right, it's like, spits it, and it's another sickening loogie, and it's just sitting on his face. And Foley starts laughing again, and he's like, look, here's the thing. You can do your worst, but this is just spit. And you can make all these videos and you can call me all kinds of names. But you know how that saying goes. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. But I'm willing to bet whoever made that adage never had somebody say, you are Randy Orton's bitch on national television. He's like, and as soon as he said that, something snapped in me because I realized the people were starting to believe that. And I just cannot. And then he starts, when he's saying cannot, he just starts punching himself in the head to the point where he draws blood, and blood is streaming down his face. He's like, I can just not accept that. I cannot sit here while you tear apart my legacy. He's like, I've seen my ear get thrown away in Munich. I've seen pieces of my skin hanging off barbed wire in Japan. And now I don't have to ask myself, do I have what it takes to go into where the darkness dwells? Because I'm already there. There's a time and a place for hatred, and it's right here, right now. And then he flips the microphone so it's like a knife and just immediately starts stabbing at Randy Orton with the microphone, and just starts like whooping Randy Orton's ass. And then it's not long before Evolution comes rolling out, and they're like all freaked out. They try to pull him apart. Numbers are too great. They end up throwing Mick Foley out of the ring. He rolls out. He grabs a chair. He rolls right back in. He takes out Flair. He takes out Batista, and all of Evolution runs away.
Holy shit.
Yeah, Samee, how does it feel to see our boy rise from the ashes and cut one of those horrifying ECW style Cactus Jack promos? How did it feel to get some of that vintage Cactus Jack once again?
You know how we talked about getting goosebumps when Cactus Jack was gonna show up in our Dude Love episode? This is a different kind of goosebumps, and this is a I don't know her moment where it's like, oh, Mick did what?
The guy who dresses up like Santa Claus did this shit? Like, what the fuck?
Thankfully, I've never seen a stabbing live, but I've seen it in the moving pictures, and there is just some deep down feral savagery that comes with how fast and how hard you have to stab somebody. Oh, that's just disturbing. Welcome back, Cactus Jack.
I don't know. It started with him asking Randy Orton to spit on him, and it ends with everybody so fucking afraid. Like, this guy's fucking
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
And it was just a masterclass in, I think Randy Orton even has the promo. He's like, I'm not even in my prime yet right now. So it's like he's fighting a guy who is athletically superior to him,
Mhm.
younger, fresher, doesn't have as
Mhm.
many injuries, but Mick Foley is able to just scare the shit out of him. And it's just who he is and what he's willing to do and the bona fides that precede him. So when he's talking about being able to tap into a dark part of himself, we've explored his entire career for a month. We know what he's capable of. We know what he's capable of enduring. And at this stage of time, I think it's pretty abundantly clear he is willing to take Randy Orton into some deep, deep waters. We don't know if he could swim like that yet. He's 23.
Imagine being 23 and somebody doing this to you.
Yeah, and then somebody 20 years older than you is punching themselves in the head, talking about how they want to fucking kill you. Like, no way.
Yeah, I would quit. I would quit my job.
If Randy Orton had walked out Mick Foley style, I would not have blamed him. So Mick Foley, he's got his sights set squarely on Randy Orton, but there's a problem. As we said, Randy's a part of Evolution, and so anytime Mick Foley tries to get involved, it's always going to be a 4-on-1, and Foley's always going to lose. So if he wants to fight Evolution, he's going to need some backup. And so he gets his old buddy, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, A-list Hollywood actor who's got a blossoming movie career. He wants to come back and reform Mick Foley and The Rock's tag team, the Rock and Sock Connection, for one last ride to see if they can fight Evolution at WrestleMania 20.
That's wild.
We get to WrestleMania 20. It is Evolution versus the Rock and Sock Connection. But in the end, the numbers were just too great. And the Rock and Sock Connection is not able to beat Evolution. I don't want to delve too deep into this match because I just know from hearing and reading interviews with Mick Foley, he was very disappointed in how this match went for him personally. He is very upfront about the fact that he had not wrestled in 4 years. So he had some ring rust, he had nerves, and then The Rock and Ric Flair, he thought it was a really great showcase for them, and he thought that what they did was really entertaining. But I think Mick Foley was like, we were setting up a blood feud, but then as soon as you bring in The Rock, it's going to end up being a little more comedic. And so I think he just thought tonally it wasn't right. And I think just athletically, he wasn't happy with the performance he put in. Foley is supremely disappointed, and he knows that he can do better if only he can get Randy Orton 1-on-1. So they set up that exact match for a month later at Backlash. So on the way to Backlash, April 5th, 2004, on an episode of Monday Night Raw, where Mick Foley cuts this incredible promo where he's backstage and he's sitting in a rocking chair and he's holding a rose and he's got like this big present in his lap. He's just rocking back and forth and he's reminiscing about his glory days. And he's talking about the legacy of what it means to be hardcore. And he says the word hardcore, it's not about chairs or ladders or cookie sheets or garbage cans. To me, being hardcore was about being willing to go above and beyond for the fans. So to Foley, being hardcore is a commitment, saying that he loves the business and he loves the fans so much he is willing to put his own body through unimaginable pain and suffering. I think when he said that line, I took a step back to be like, oh, you could really tell that he took some time off to be a writer, because these promos are just so next level above what anybody is capable. It's so...
Well, the guy isn't getting concussed every fucking week. His brain is actually functioning now.
Even when he was concussed every week, his promos were incredible and they were heartfelt. But these are real, like the angles he's taking are just, you can tell that this guy's a New York Times bestselling author. So see, he talks about being unimaginable pain, and he says all those hardcore matches, all those death matches, he did that to provide for his family. So in a way, the violence he inflicted on other people, he did that for love. And all those people he brutalized with thumbtacks and with barbed wire, those guys were honorable. They certainly didn't spit in his face. They certainly didn't run attack ads on him for weeks. But in the end, even though those guys were honorable, he still wrapped his arm in barbed wire and tore them apart all the same. And then he looks directly at the camera and he's like, so what do you think I'm going to do to you, Randy? I'm going to kick your ass. And then he backs off. He goes, everybody always says that. Everybody always says, I'm going to kick your ass. So I'm going to have to be a little bit more descriptive about what I mean. And to be a little more descriptive, well, that brings me to this. And then he opens the present in his lap. He reaches in and he pulls out a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire.
Oh
And he
my
says, "Let me
God.
introduce you to an old friend of mine." And he promises that what he's going to do to Randy Orton at Backlash is going to be biblical. And then he gets up and he starts swinging the bat around and he's hitting lighting fixtures. He's hitting equipment. He's hitting all this kind of stuff. And he's just screaming about how I'm going to teach you, Randy. I'm going to teach you what it means to be hardcore and I'm going to love it. And then it just pans in on his face. And then it cuts to Randy Orton in the locker room who just has this like he's so fucking freaked out.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's if you can find this promo, like I did not do it justice. If you can find this promo, it is incredible. It is one of the best promos I've ever seen. It's so good. April 5th, 2004, on an episode of Monday Night Raw. And a fun fact about this promo, it was a huge inspiration on Bray Wyatt in his presentation. He would come to the ring with a rocking chair and he would rock back and forth. And he cited that Mick Foley was a huge inspiration on the early presentation of his character. And I just thought that was really cool. This is an iconic promo just for the content and then also the legacy and the inspiration. I thought that was really awesome.
Have you ever wanted to fight someone so badly that you needed to go into poetry about it? You know how like in speeches or whatever, to loved ones are like, I love you more than I can express. And they leave it there instead of like actually trying to express it.
Yeah.
Have you ever wanted to fight someone so badly that you went to that next level?
Yeah. First of all, yeah, absolutely. And I think what I like about Mick Foley in this feud specifically, I think he's digging deep into his ECW days, those Cactus Jack promos that are really chilling and really scary. I think what he's doing is he's blurring the line between love and hate. And that's what I've heard sometimes, where sometimes you can hate somebody so much it feels like you love them. And so he's writing the opposite of love poems to Randy Orton. And he's getting very descriptive and very evocative. And he's talking about how he's going to love ripping the flesh off of his back with barbed wire. And it feels like love to a certain degree. It's so intense. It feels like the next door neighbor to love, where you take two steps away and there's passion, but it's just hate. That's what makes it feel like Mick Foley has fucking lost it, because he seems unhinged. He seems like he's got nothing to lose. We've seen him be disrespected. We've seen him get backed into a corner, all for him to say like, thank you for helping me dive deep into this pool of darkness within myself. But then, because he's a New York Times bestselling author and he's had that experience, he can now eloquently express what that worldview looks like. And it's horrifying, dude.
Yeah, it is so fucking scary when somebody hates you and they're also smart. It's like, oh shit, I made a mistake.
This takes us to April 18th, 2004, Backlash. And it is going to be a no holds barred match for the WWE Intercontinental Championship. Evolution is barred from ringside, meaning it's just Randy Orton and Mick Foley. So what I heard when I was listening to Foley's pod, he mentions that the song he was listening to get into the headspace to be able to do this match was Winter by Tori Amos. So if you ever are in a place in your life where you need to tap into the unrelenting darkness of Mick Foley, Winter by Tori Amos. Check it out. Samee, we watched Backlash 2004. How did you feel?
Mick Foley, Cactus Jack, is a pro at what he does. He's got 20 years on Lil Randy Orton. And, I think Randy does a good job of keeping up as best he can.
This match truly does feel like a man fighting a tornado or fighting the ocean or fighting a hurricane. It really just feels like Randy Orton is fighting an act of God. He comes to the ring. He's got a trash can full of toys.
I love it.
Not wasting any time, Mick Foley just walks to the ring. He's got his barbed wire baseball bat. He rolls in there. Before the bell can even ring, he is taking Major League Baseball swings at Randy Orton.
Yeah.
He hits the trash can. And Randy Orton's so freaked out, he rolls out of the ring, and then Mick Foley turns into Jason Voorhees. Randy Orton is just running around the outside of the ring, and Mick Foley is taking huge chops, and he hits the guardrail, he hits the stairs, he hits the announce table, and he is just trying to take Randy Orton's head off. This felt so unsafe because he's swinging towards the crowd and he's not pulling these punches at all, and it's real barbed wire, it's a real baseball bat. By the time Randy Orton picks up a trash can and just full power hits Mick Foley in the head, I had a sigh of relief. I was like, oh my, thank God, dude. Like, Mick Foley was rabid this entire match. He goes in, he puts his foot on the gas. Whatever disappointment he felt at WrestleMania, he's fully shaking it off. He's like, he needs to prove something to himself in this match. And so he just goes ham the entire time. They do not let up. This is one of those matches where every move is a power move. Every throw, every punch is a haymaker. These guys are just going to town on each other.
It's a rare occasion to see someone in the WWE like going at another person with this much convincing murder in their eyes, you know? Like we see blood feuds. Watching Cactus Jack Mick Foley go after Randy like this, it kind of feels like he really wanted to kill him.
It has that intensity for sure, where that's what I mean when I say it just felt like a force of nature. It felt like pure hatred. There's this great bit where Orton is on the ground. He's sort of scrambling around Mick Foley. He pulls out Mr. Sacco. And then he looks down and he sees the barbed wire baseball bat. And then he picks the two up and he kind of gives a audience decide thing. Like, hey, do you want to see Sacco? You want to see the barbed wire bat? Everybody, of course, wants to see the barbed wire bat. So then he charges at Randy, and Pool Cue hits him in the face with the butt of the bat. And it hits him right above the eye. And then Randy just starts bleeding. He's on the ground. He is bleeding buckets in this match.
Yeah.
He's crawling around. Foley gets on top of him and he starts cheese gratering the barbed wire on Randy Orton's forehead. He throws him to the ropes. He cheese graters him again. He throws him to the turnbuckle, cheese graters him. He throws him out of the ropes. And then kind of Nick Gage style gives the fans their money's worth, and he cheese graters Randy Orton in full view of the hard camera. Most brutally of all, he puts the barbed wire bat squarely on Randy Orton's junk.
Oh no!
And then drops a leg drop onto the baseball bat.
He's killing just future Randys. He's stopping the bloodline.
He's so angry at Randy Orton. He's fighting his unborn, his yet to be born children.
Yeah. Oh my God, Mick, relax.
Just like, can you imagine to hate someone so much you attempt to give them a vasectomy in the middle of a match? So at this point, Foley is going. He's fucking on one. He rolls out of the ring. He grabs a can of gasoline. He starts pouring it on the bat. And at this point, the officials come out and they're like, okay, all right, if you set that bat on fire, we will fully cancel the show. So then you see Foley just go like, okay, throws the bat out of the ring. Everybody's mad. They start booing. Then Foley pulls one of those deathmatch wooden pallets with just bushels and tumbleweeds of barbed wire. He rolls that into the ring. Randy Orton's got enough time to recover. Then he flips Foley onto that pallet of barbed wire, and he just lands as though he, again, like we said before, like he's lounging in a pool, is just laying in barbed wire.
I don't know if we've seen somebody land on one of those barbed wire pallets face first, but we do see Mick run right into one. Took my breath away.
So at this point, once he gets him on the barbed wire, Orton, the momentum starts to swing back in his direction. He goes to the corner and he gets a bag full of thumbtacks. He pours the thumbtacks all over the ground. There is a mountain of thumbtacks on the ground now. And Randy Orton goes to hit his RKO. And this is a move that only a 40-year-old man would attempt. But Randy Orton goes, and then you see Mick Foley just go, no thanks. And then he pushes him away, and Randy Orton just falls back first onto a huge pile of thumbtacks. And this is some fun backstage details that I heard. So on Foley's pod, Conrad, his co-host, is asking him, like, did Randy Orton ask you for any advice about the thumbtack stuff? And he was like, oh yeah, he came up to me and he was curious. He was like, I've never done the thumbtacks. I was wondering if you had any advice. And Mick Foley's advice was basically just, I don't know, 1,000 doesn't hurt any worse than 1 or 2. So
That's
if you can do
fucked
one or
up.
two, you can do 1,000. And that was the advice he gave him.
This is out of control because clearly you can't practice or you shouldn't practice landing on thumbtacks. So I kind of think that when we see Randy get up from this big fall and he's like shaking a lot, I think it's legitimate shock. And it even goes even further because he's trying to get as much distance as possible between him and the thumbtacks, but he can't stand up yet because his body's in shock. So he walks on his fucking knees across thumbtacks. It's not a good time. Not a good time. What's even sicker is that Cactus Jack does not give Randy any moment to process. He just rolls him up. He's like, all right, this is it. It's like, what the fuck, dude? Like, he's really, like, it's wild.
It is though he is fighting a great white shark. And this shark,
Yeah.
it's like, I'm going to fucking eat it. Like, we're not doing a performance. That's the intensity where it really felt like the Kevin Owens Sami Zayn match where they are just going ape shit on each other the entire time. The violence is so intense and so specific that it feels real. It felt really real.
Yeah.
At this point, they're battling up the entrance ramp. Foley throws Orton off of the side. He hits this huge table that's got a bunch of random cables on it. And then the officials are trying to get him to relax. Then Foley pushes the officials away and then hits a classic Cactus Jack elbow drop onto Randy Orton when he's down there.
Right in the living room.
He goes 1, 2. Randy Orton kicks out. They fight all the way back into the ring. Randy picks up the baseball bat and then he just starts chopping away at Mick Foley's back, just swinging so hard. That's when Sacco comes into play. He gets the mandible claw locked in. Randy hits a low blow, hits an RKO. 1, 2. Foley kicks out. Orton picks him up and then hits another RKO, this time onto the barbed wire baseball bat. Hits the ground, and you know Randy Orton is finally able to pick up that victory over Mick Foley. And much like he did for The Undertaker, much like he did for Sting, Mick Foley came back to make Randy Orton into a motherfucking legend, dude.
I'm speechless. How are you feeling?
I feel good. The reason I wanted to cover this storyline specifically is because Foley talks about this match with Randy Orton at Backlash as being the greatest match of his entire career. And I got to attest, I've watched a lot of really good Mick Foley matches. This one is right up there. It's got that same intensity that he had with Shawn Michaels in the Mind Games 1996 match, but it has the brutality of the Hell in a Cells that he's done with both The Undertaker and with Triple H. It has like just a nice sampler platter of everything. It's got the intensity of the Cactus Jack ECW. It's like the perfect amalgamation of all the various skills that Mick Foley has acquired over his entire career, and he was able to display them all, cutting incredible promos, doing incredible storylines that people didn't believe in, but he had to fight tooth and nail just to get them to happen. And then he was able to deliver one of the coolest matches, 3 years after he was supposed to have retired?
Yeah.
Unreal.
In a fighting shape that we have never seen Mick Foley be this way ever, I think.
And that was the thing he pointed to when he was talking about how disappointed he was in the WrestleMania match, that he said that he was going to the gym at 1 a.m. every single day for 7 weeks to get into that shape.
Holy
for this
shit.
match specifically. So Samee,
yeah,
Mick Foley comes out of this incredible feud with Randy Orton. Surely that's the end of his career, right? No more insane, crazy matches for Mick Foley, right?
Oh, you stupid fool. He does this again with Edge about 2 years after this massive match with Randy Orton. I thought you were the headmaster.
How did I not know?
Shucks. Well, all right. Well, let's
my
get into it.
foolishness set you up perfectly. Oh, no.
So the Edge and Mick feud is kind of a Russian nesting doll within an Edge and John Cena feud. So I'm going to cover a little bit of that before we get into Edge and Mick Foley. We have yet to talk about Edge in great detail. And guess what?
What?
We're not going to start today because we'll probably eventually cover him in great, great detail. But here's a little tiny bio for you. Edge, or Adam Copeland, currently in AEW, debuted at WWE in 1997. He's close friends with Christian, who we covered previously. Edge and Christian formed an alliance called the Brood with Gangrel after feuding with him, and together they terrorized the entire WWE roster. Edge and Christian drifted from Gangrel and became a tag team. As this tag team, they become synonymous with the creation of tables, ladders, and chairs matches. Eventually, Christian and Edge betray each other, and Edge holds his own as a solid mid-carder for a while until WrestleMania 21, where he wins the inaugural Money in the Bank. He also gets involved, for real, with another wrestler named Lita. But
we're gonna do a whole episode on that. We're gonna do a whole episode on that.
But the important thing to note about them and their relationship for this episode, is that Lita is always around and always interfering. Edge spends all of 2005 feuding with main eventers until New Year's Revolution, January 8th, 2006. It is the Elimination Chamber for the WWE Championship spinner belt between... I think it's really important to make sure that everybody knows that right now, the biggest top title is the spinner belt. It is 2006.
People are willing to betray friendships, are willing to turn on people at the drop of the hat, all just for the chance to put this spinner belt on their waist.
I graduated high school in 2006, and to know that there were people blood feuding for the spinner belt, I really wish I was tapped in, because I 100% probably would have purchased my own spinner belt.
Samee, you have a lifetime. You could get that spinner belt today if you wanted to.
We've talked so much shit about it already. I don't think I can. Or do I already have one on the way? Okay, let's get into this Elimination Chamber. Contestants: John Cena, Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle, Carlito, Shawn Masters, and Kane. John retains the title after enduring a grueling battle that left him bloodied, only to have Edge cash in his Money in the Bank contract. After 2 huge spears, Edge wins the WWE Championship belt for the first time. So, Michael, how pissed would you be if you worked so damn hard for nearly 10 years, you put your body on the line, and then when you finally win the top prize, you are presented with the WWE Championship spinner belt?
I think it would be like if you, Samee, I'm going to give you an all expenses paid trip to the fanciest restaurant in the world, and then they bring you out a plate of chicken nuggets. You're just like, are you fucking kidding me? And they're like, no. They're like gourmet chicken nuggets. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, this sucks. Edge, he wins the very first Money in the Bank. He cashes in for the very first time. He wins the WWE Championship for the very first time.
Mm-hmm.
I know Edge pretty well. He's going to be really chill and humble about this, right?
Absolutely not. The next day after winning the WWE Championship spinner belt title, he schedules a live sex celebration with Lita, and he cuts this very long-winded promo, but he tells the audience, I bet you guys thought we were gonna have a crazy sex night after last night, but we abstained because we wanted to do sex right here in front of you. And this is 2006. It's not the late 90s. It's not in the 80s. It is 2006.
Samee, I have a confession to make for you. I watched the live sex celebration.
How many rewinds did it get?
This was a little bit pre-TiVo, so there was no way to go back. I just had to experience it and keep it within my mind. But I'm ashamed to admit, because you watched this in your 30s, but I watched this in my teens and was just like, oh my God, dude. And just, spoiler alert, you don't see shit. You don't see anything. But in my mind, just the fact that somebody dipping below covers, I was like, this has to be real. They have to really be having sex there.
This is 2006. We are 18 years old, Michael.
I have unfiltered access to the internet, but still I saw the live sex celebration and was just like, Oh my God,
On
dude. This
Monday
is,
Night Raw.
yeah, this is on a Monday night. I saw
On Fox.
on Fox, I saw Edge pretend to have sex with his girlfriend in a bed. And I was just like, Lord I almost fainted. That's how out of control hot this was to me when I was a teen.
Can't believe it. All right, let me pose this question to you.
Yeah, for
What
sure.
type of victory would it take for you to book a live sex celebration?
I was thinking about the same. I honestly was gonna ask you kind of the same question, but
Oh, great.
I think in true heelish fashion, I think perhaps Champion Mike would not be able to get it up with 15,000 people watching him live. I think I'd be like,
I'm scared.
I'm too scared. I didn't realize what this is gonna do. Do you think you could participate in a big stadium live sex celebration? Do you think you could do that? I don't think I have it in me.
I want you to mentally, close your eyes and then rewind to 30 minutes ago where we're talking about how Mick Foley agreed to have a match with Randy Orton after not wrestling for 3 to 4 years. And then he has some weird stipulations, which I would have.
Sure.
And then I would show up, my theme music plays. I get as far as getting to the bed. And then my shoulders drop and I walk out.
You would Mick Foley style leave.
I think so, yeah. I would really try. But I think it wouldn't be long.
So I think the two of us are both saying we're not built like Edge. We don't have what it takes to do a live sex celebration in a stadium on a Monday night.
Look, we both just saw him in his underwear. Maybe we're not built like Edge.
I was also gonna ask you, Samee, just when you watched the live sex celebration as an adult who did not grow up and had no nostalgia bomb to it, how did you feel Edge was as a sex partner? Like, how, just visually, what did he seem like? Oh wow, this guy seems good at sex. Or were you like, what a fucking chump, dude?
Did I have a moment watching this match where I thought to myself, oh shit, am I gonna accidentally get aroused by this? I did have that moment. I did have that moment where I'm like, oh fuck, is this gonna get me?
Samee, that was me the whole segment when I was 18. That was me. You turned into me.
What is this box we're putting ourselves in?
Yeah, right. Get horny at the live sex celebration if you want to. We're not here to shame anybody.
Just ourselves.
Yeah, just ourselves. Just put weird pressure on ourselves, apparently.
All right. So getting back on track. Getting back in bed. Ric Flair actually comes and disgustingly interrupts this sex celebration. And I guess, thank goodness that Edge beats the shit out of Ric Flair, but also this whole entire fucking situation is fucking crazy. So Edge makes his way down the ramp, literally hip thrusting the whole way down. And then Edge is quickly zipping up his leather pants and just smashes Rick with a chair. He concertos him on an announce desk, and then John Cena comes flying in out of nowhere and chases Edge up the ramp, and he turns his attention to Lita. And we all hold our breath, waiting to see what John fucking Cena is going to do to Lita. And he picks her up, puts her over his shoulders, and FUs her.
So that's his finishing move. He doesn't he doesn't pick up where Edge left off.
No. That was January 9th. We go to January 29th, 2006. It's the Royal Rumble, and it's Edge versus John Cena for the WWE Heavyweight title. Unfortunately, John wins, ending Edge's 21-day run. Far too short, we would think, and far too short, Edge thinks.
Yeah, it sort of seems like Edge's whole problem is finishing prematurely.
Wow. Look, it's not his fault. It's not his fault. So,
out this jail.
I come early. But during the Royal Rumble, Lita interferes and Edge submits to an STFU, which is John Cena's submission move. John Cena has the spinner belt back, It's the day after January 30th, 2006, Monday Night Raw. It's Edge versus John Cena again. Is it for the WWE Heavyweight title? Edge invokes the rematch clause immediately because whatever happened at the Royal Rumble, he is not okay with. Unfortunately, Lita, again, being a good girlfriend, being a bad interference, accidentally hits Edge herself with the title belt. But at that moment, Edge was on John's shoulders. Lita came swinging around. What the ref saw was Lita interfering for John. Edge wins by disqualification. However, the heavyweight title stays in John Cena's big, meaty hands.
Yeah, so that's, again, champion's advantage. So the WWE champion can only be decided via pinfall or submission. So because he was disqualified, he wins but doesn't win the belt.
This 21-day run that Edge had, it obviously bugs him a whole lot that he's not the WWE champion anymore. And he goes fucking crazy. He's like foaming at the mouth. Any point where he can try to get that title back, he will. And so the following week, February 6th, 2006, they end up at it in a mixed tag team match with Edge and Lita versus John Cena and Maria, because the winner of this match decides who a special guest referee will be for the next time that Edge and John Cena clash for the WWE title. John and Maria win this match, and John picks up the microphone and he's like, "Hey, guess what? Today I ran into somebody and, I wasn't counting my chickens before they hatched, but I asked them if they would be a special guest referee, and they said yes. And Edge, I think the special guest referee would be helpful to you in case you wanted to get a little hardcore." And then it's like, oh shit, it's fucking Mick Foley. John got Mick Foley to be the special guest referee for their match on February 16th, 2006, and another episode of Monday Night Raw. It's Edge versus John Cena for the WWE spinner belt once again.
These men are going to war for the spinner belt.
Edge will not move on from this fucking spinner belt. He thinks he deserves it, and John is, obviously the thing that is holding him back from it. So he's just relentlessly going after John every single damn day. Unfortunately, Edge loses this match, and he straight up blames Mick Foley, which is super off base because in the final moments of this match, Edge submits to John, but Mick is already out, knocked out of the ring. So there's one. And then once Mick is back, that's when John gets Edge again. So there's actually no fact in Edge's mania of thinking that he deserves it and it's Mick's fault. The next week, Edge challenges Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and after winning, he takes Hacksaw's 2x4 and he creams Duggan in the nuts with it. And Edge turns to the camera directly and he threatens Mick Foley, and he's like, "I want to fight you at WrestleMania, and if you don't answer the challenge in 7 days, I'm going to fly to Long Island and I'm going to beat you up in front of your fucking family."
Oh my gosh.
Shit. 7 days pass, and Edge is back in the ring with a mic. After Edge waits a few minutes for Mick to answer his threats, Lita pulls plane tickets to Long Island out. And they're like, "We can be there by midnight tonight."
No.
I do want to take a pause right here and just remind everyone that Mick Foley is incredible on the mic and is still a very absolutely beloved figure in WWE. Whenever Edge tries to make a dig at Mick, it's falling flat a lot. He flails around a lot.
Yeah, because I was going to say, Edge threatening to fly to Long Island to beat Mick Foley up in front of his wife and kids. I was like, man, that's a pretty sick promo from Edge. So how's Mick Foley going to come back from this?
Well, here he goes. So Mick finally comes out and hands Edge's ass to him over the mic. He says, "You choked against John Cena. I didn't cause that. You worry about being the transitional champion. Well, I've been transitional champion 3 times, which makes me the greatest transitional champion ever. I refuse your challenge because I have nothing to prove to you." And then Edge tries his best to counter, but it's just too hard. He tries to belittle Mick. He's like, "People won't remember your reigns as transitional champion. People only remember you for 3 things. 1, for getting your ear ripped off." And the crowd goes fucking nuts. And he goes, 2, for getting thrown off the Hell in the Cell. And the crowd goes fucking wild. And he's like, 3, for wearing a stupid sock puppet. And the crowd is still continuing to go nuts. And Edge goes in for one final kill here. And he goes, "If I'm the rated R superstar, then you're the rated O superstar." Michael, pop quiz. What does this O stand for?
Orton.
If I'm the rated R superstar, then you're the rated Orton superstar. Unfortunately, no, that does not work, Michael. The answer that we're looking for is overrated. So the full sentiment was, if I'm the rated R superstar, then you're the rated O superstar. Overrated superstar. And nobody makes a fucking peep at this.
That's sort of to be the same as when somebody goes ATM machine, because the M in ATM is machine. So it's like you're saying ATM machine.
Sure.
And so it almost feels like I'm the rated R superstar and you're the rated O superstar, and O is for overrated. So you're the rated overrated superstar is what Edge said, which is dumb as hell.
I mean, nobody was on Edge's side at all. And while he was counting off on his fingers, Mick was like, "Yeah, that's sure. Yeah, they'll know me from my ear. No problem. I do have a pretty good legacy." And so Edge finally turns a corner and starts getting some momentum here. And he goes, "You're pathetic. You do have a lot to prove, Mick, because you've never really won at WrestleMania. Not really. You've had countouts and disqualifications. You've had that fucking dumpster match that Samee and Michael covered in a previous episode, but nobody else remembers. But you've never had a defining WrestleMania moment, and you crave that. Me? Well, I've never lost at WrestleMania, and you know if you went up against me, you'd lose." Fuck. So, in response, Mick gives Edge some kudos, a slap in the face, and a counteroffer. He goes, "You're right. You would beat me at WrestleMania. You're younger, you're in better shape, and apparently you care a whole lot more about me than I care about you.
Oh.
But you're right. I do need a WrestleMania moment. So while I reject your offer for a wrestling match at WrestleMania, I'd like to challenge you to another match where there are no rules, there are no disqualifications, and there are no excuses." And when he starts raising his voice, this is where Mick Foley's voice starts cracking and sounding a little bit like Cactus Jack, a little bit like Mankind. And I just love how Mick can really call that up mid-promo. It's very intoxicating. To help Edge decide, Mick disappears and comes back out with a barbed wire bat. He rushes to the ring, but Edge and Lita escape. A week after, it's Lita and Maria in a match. Lita wins, but Edge is still pissed at Maria for being tied to John Cena. So he kind of like backs up like a cartoon dog or like a cartoon bull, and he's threatening to spear Maria after she's already lost a match, which is insane. But thankfully, Mick Foley rolls in out of nowhere, but Edge gets the upper hand and he concertos Mick really hard. And Mick just lays there on the ground, and Edge kind of like slithers up to Mick Foley with a microphone, and he tells his unconscious body that he accepts the hardcore match at WrestleMania. Now we're at Saturday night's main event. Edge forces Mick to be on his show called The Cutting Edge. So Lita and Edge come out, and Lita introduces Edge as the man who is perfect at WrestleMania. So stupid. What a gal. So Edge says that Mick is a teddy bear and a Muppet, and he just shows up being a little pal to everybody. And Mick just runs down the ramp, and Edge immediately sets the table on fire, and an official shows up out of nowhere and puts it out within seconds. But Mick kicks the table over, and he rushes Edge and lays into him. Mick steps away and gives us a bang bang, and he pours a huge bag of thumbtacks out in the ring. But thanks to Lita, he's the one that ends up face first into the tacks. And as Edge and Lita retreat, Mick pops up with thumbtacks all over his face and shoulder, and he fucking smiles. This is what Mick looked like.
Oh my God. Ah!
Just the scariest fucking thing. Like, Edge is screwed. There is no way that he's going to be safe with this man. After Mick turns and smiles over his shoulder, so demure, he runs up the ramp to follow Edge and Lita. He knocks Edge down. He gives Edge a concerto. And then he starts picking the tacks off of his face before he raises the chair like classic Mick Foley triumphantly.
This is kind of my favorite thing about late career Mick. It's a lot of these guys who are legends, you know.
Mhm.
Randy Orton right now is definitely in that legend spot. Adam Copeland over in AEW is in that legend spot. But he is just able to come back. There is just something so cool about seeing a veteran performer just come back and hand these younger talents their fucking asses, dude. It's so awesome. And that's what I like, where these guys are much younger in their careers. And so you are watching them be like, huh, I'm about to make a name for myself. And then Mick Foley is like, I'm willing to put my face in thumbtacks. What are you willing to do?
Like, literally, tell me what are you willing to do? Seriously. So later, Mick thanks Edge for speaking the truth on his show. And Mick slips into the Mankind voice a little bit in this promo too. And Edge has awakened the beast. And by the end of the promo, it's basically Cactus Jack on the mic. And he's like, at WrestleMania, Edge will find out that the truth hurts. Bang, bang! So Lita, and not Edge, comes out, and comes out kind of like super shy while Metalingus is blaring through the speakers. And she tries to appeal to Winnie the Pooh Mick Foley, and she suggests canceling the hardcore match and instead, hey, why don't you just do some straight up wrestling? Come on, Mick. And Mick starts getting tired of her charade and just starts screaming at her to slap him, kind of like Mick was screaming at Randy. He's just like, I know what this is. He starts screaming at her to slap him, and she does, and she tries to do a low blow, but Mick is way too wise, and he grabs her hand instead and mandible claws Lita, which, I don't know, I feel like an intergender mandible claw, it feels worse to see.
It's a scary visual for sure.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great. So by this point, Edge has already come out to the ring, but when Mankind is mandible clawing Lita, he doesn't interfere. He just stands by watching with his mouth open, and he just lets it happen. And so Lita falls to the ground. Mick releases, and he does another bang bang, and it seems like Mick has left the building, and Cactus Jack is now in the feud. In another episode, Mick comes out with 2 gift-wrapped boxes. He leaves one on the ramp, and he takes one into the ring with him. And he apologizes for shoving his hand in Lita's mouth, and that it was super crazy of him. And as an apology, he pulls out long-stemmed roses from the box that he brought to the ring with him. And he tells Edge that he's a gift for him too, and it's just on the ramp for him to pick up if he wants to come out. And Edge and Lita come out, and Edge is super embarrassed about last week too, because he didn't confront him, and Mick caught him off guard, but it will never happen again. And Mick tells him that the gift in the box is something that he can use at WrestleMania. And Edge is super pissed, and he calls Mick out for only caring about paychecks at this point. Oh, and remember, Mick, you cost me my title! And Foley interrupts Edge, and he's like, this is not about the title or the money for me. This is about that defining WrestleMania moment. And I have one in my head already. It's about you, Edge. It's about you, Edge. It's about you bleeding from various parts of your body. It's about you, Edge, begging for mercy. Except I can't hear because I had my ear ripped off of my head. But don't worry, Edge. I'm not going to rip your ear off your head because I want you to hear everything. I want you to hear the sick sound of your flesh tearing when I carve you up. I want to hear the sound of the children screaming, their little lives psychologically scarred forever. I want you to hear the little pitter-patter of blood drops hitting the canvas as they rain down from your skull. And most of all, Edge, I want you to hear that ring announcer when they say that the winner of this match at WrestleMania is Mick Foley. You see, that's why I brought out the present, to give you a fighting chance. So, why don't you go ahead and open the box, Edge? Open the box!
Oh my fucking god. Ah! This is absolutely nut. And I don't know, that's what I really like about this is because he's older, right? He has to do a lot of this. He has to carry a lot of this feud over the microphone. It is really incumbent on him to be extra creative and extra descriptive and really try to hype up this match. And so every step of the way, I really can feel him digging deep into a new page of intensity just to fucking get into Edge's head. And it's rattling me, dude. I can't imagine what it did to him.
The fact that Mick went so far as to say, like, oh, I want you to hear the screams of children, and I want you to hear the screams of the children forming trauma around this. Yeah, I do. I want you to hear that, and I'm gonna do it to you. It's like, oh, fuck you, Mick. How dare you?
There is something extra scary about somebody who fully understands the consequences of their actions and are choosing to do them anyway. You know what I mean? Because I think a foe like Randy Orton, for example, he always has this look on his face when, he kicked Mick Foley and he fell down the stairs. He always has this like, what did I do kind of expression that he's sort of known for.
Yeah, voices.
Whereas I feel like Mick Foley, especially at this stage of his career, is always very much like, yeah, no, I totally understand that I'm going to hurt you. And I know how, and I know what the consequences of that are because I've lived it. And that's just a credibility you can't fake. And it's only because we know the career this guy's had that when he says what he's going to do, you believe it because you've seen him do it.
It's scary. His commitment is so fucking scary, dude. Edge opens the box and it's just a bat. And he's like, you arrogant son of a bitch. You want to give this to me as a gift for WrestleMania? Well, tonight I'm going to give you a gift that keeps on giving. And he storms the ring. And as he slides in, Mick pulls out the barbed wire bat from the rose gift box. And Edge is scared shitless. He runs away into the crowd. And before the cameras cut, we see Mick in the corner, swaying, cuddling the barbed wire bat and bleeding from the mouth. I think he was kind of kissing it.
Dude.
The fact that you're rolling your eyes and Mick kissing the bat.
It's just...
Oh, man.
I can't even conceive of being able to tap into that level of hatred for another person. I'm willing to kiss barbed wire because I'm so in character. I can't imagine that, dude. That's next level.
So now we're at WrestleMania 22. It's April 2nd, 2006. This is a hardcore match where falls count anywhere. It is not for a title. It's not for anything, really.
It's just to hurt Edge. That's it. Mick Foley's made that abundantly clear. It's Mick Foley is rolling into this to make an example out of Edge.
This is a hardcore match. It is a no falls match. It is a Mick hurts Edge match. The teddy bear is gone, and we are pretty much seeing Cactus Jack walk down the ramp. He's chewing nothing. He's just chewing his tongue, I think. He's finger gunning, he's muttering, and Edge is in so much trouble. Our first weapon of the match was fed into the ring by Lita, and it's a cookie sheet that Edge hits Mick with so hard that it sounds like fucking gunshots, and the cookie sheet immediately bends in half. It is the loudest metal hitting face sound that I've ever heard, or at least heard so far. It is disgusting.
Edge has this fire under him the entire time where it feels like he is trying to get this match over with as quickly as possible. He is conveying that he is so scared to be in this match that he is I think he's wrestling a lot more recklessly than he usually would, because he just needs to get the fuck away from this guy. He needs this to be over. And frankly, I don't blame him.
He's like super flooring it. He's trying to do the worst stuff imaginable right away. After creaming Mick with a cookie sheet and also a road sign, it seems like Edge is kind of calming down a little bit, but he never really brings his guard fully down and like relaxes while wrestling. But he pulls his shirt off and he goes in for a spear. And after he does this spear, Edge rolls away looking a lot more hurt than usual.
Because normally the spear is his finisher move, so if he hits it, it's over.
And like we're used to seeing him like pop right back up and pin somebody afterwards, but not this time. And so while he's writhing in agony, Mick rips off one of his shirts to expose that he was wearing 3 more layers and also a barbed wire belt all along. So he wrapped barbed wire around his stomach so that when he got speared, Edge would take a huge cut.
He rolls over and his shoulder is bleeding. He's just fully oozing blood, which I always feel like I'm so used to seeing head wounds in wrestling that when you see blood anywhere else, it does always feel a little bit more invasive. And so just the fact that, Edge had the blood, and then Foley pulls out some wire cutters.
He just cuts himself loose.
Cutting himself loose. But then, Samee, what does he do with the barbed wire?
He starts whipping fucking Edge with it. It's disgusting. And then Edge gets tangled and stuck in the ropes, and Mick goes under some steel steps to reveal a barbed wire bat. And this is the first time that I've seen weapons hidden underneath the 2 levels of stairs.
He's pulling strings with the ring crew just to get those toys wherever he needs them.
He's wearing his deadly fucking barbed wire bat. He's telling the ring crew to put barbed wire bats all over the place. But because Lita is such a good partner, she jumps on Mick's back to distract him. All 3 of them end up spilling over the top rope into ringside. The momentum swings over to favor Edge, and he's able to set up a table while Mick recovers. And although they don't go through it, Edge slams Mick's head onto the metal ramp so hard that it again sounds like fucking gunshots. Like, I rewound it a couple times just to see a fucking loophole, forgetting that we're dealing with Mick No Loopholes Foley here. That was probably his head smashing into the metal, making the loudest sound I've ever heard in my entire life. Back in the ring, Edge starts soaking Mick in lighter fluid, which is so mean. It's so rude. Edge picks up Mick's favorite weapon, the barbed wire baseball bat, and he starts dragging it across Mick's body and slams his face against it. They're both bleeding right now. For the record, they're both super bloody. Edge goes and flips over another set of stairs to reveal more weapons, and underneath that set of stairs is a 1-ton bag of thumbtacks that he pours all over the ring. And when he tries to get Mick into it, Mick reverses him, and it's the rated R superstar that goes into the mountain of thumbtacks. I do think it was really funny that both you and I described a pile of thumbtacks as a mountain separately.
That's kind of the only way to describe how many thumbtacks there are in these matches, where we're not dealing with, because normally it's an okay bag and it makes a nice little sprinkle, but this was so many thumbtacks.
When Edge pulls the bag out, it is so many thumbtacks that you can kind of almost feel the weight of that bag, even though you're nowhere near it and it's in the past. So blood is pouring from Mick's forehead, and he pulls a sock out of his pants. And to add to the depravity of the mandible claw, he wraps the sock in barbed wire before shoving his hand in both Edge and Lita's mouths. All three superstars are covered in blood while Mick starts swinging that barbed wire bat on Edge. And there's a moment of stillness here where Mick, covered in blood, is just sitting with a big smile on his face that rivals the thumbtack smile from earlier for scariest smile ever. Mick finds the bottle of lighter fluid from earlier and starts dousing the table with it. And while he lifts the bottle up over his head in celebration, Lita comes in and blasts him with the barbed wire bat, and she starts covering the table with more lighter fluid. And she's the one who lights the table on fire. And you see in the background, Edge just comes sprinting over and spears Mick through the ropes and onto the burning table. And Edge drags his body onto Mick and takes the win. And the shots of everyone after this match are so disturbing. Edge is more than trembling. He's like shaking and he's in shock, and he starts kind of wandering up the ramp a little confused.
The haunted look on Edge's face where it's like he won, but did he? Yeah, that's how it felt when you watch him, where this guy went through hell, and that's kind of what this whole match was. He was able to win, but at what cost?
Truly, at what cost? So after Edge and Lita go away, we see Mick Foley. He stands up and he's getting a standing ovation from the crowd, and he's smiling at everyone through the blood on his face and in his hair, and he's still Cactus Jack babbling and chewing on his tongue. And you can see him kind of like do this out of character, like trying to make sure that he's not on fire still and not returning to his wife smelling like burning flesh. Michael, would you call this entire 16-minute match a defining WrestleMania moment?
The flaming table spot is one of the most infamous visuals, certainly in WWE history. So to see it live, how did that feel? Like, you've gotten to see, I think through doing this month of Mick Foley, I really feel like you've gotten to see a lot of some of the most iconic visuals that people are possible seeing. You know, Mick going off the Hell in a Cell, the flaming table, you know, then we've also got the deathmatch stuff that he did with Terry Funk. All of these things are super infamous matches.
Like,
and so I guess,
iconic,
how did it feel to see this iconic flaming table spot live?
It happened a lot quicker than I thought it was going to, but also it makes so much sense that the table shouldn't have been on fire for too long, and like it seemed as safe as a burning table spear spot could be.
I mean, we've definitely heard about it not going like that in ECW, right? And we saw what that led to. So I would much rather I would much rather be like, oh, the table is only on fire for 3 seconds, as opposed to Terry Funk is on fire and we can't put him out. You know, I would prefer that personally.
Yeah, 100%. It's such a spectacle. And, you know, we only get that type of spectacle from Mick Foley.
So once again, Mick Foley does what he does best, what he was brought into the WWE to do. He came in for a little bit of time to bring prestige to an up-and-coming wrestler and was able to really elevate and show a new dimension of Edge that people hadn't seen up until that point. Even though he was defeated, he still came out looking, honestly, even better than Edge did in this feud, which is pretty crazy because he was making Edge look good every step of the way. But that's just the special talent that Mick Foley's had. And that was a lesson he learned at the very beginning of his career. And he's still applying it here closer to the end of his in-ring career. Transitioning out of this into the epilogue, Mick Foley stays with the WWE for a little bit. He doesn't wrestle quite as actively as he does here, but you know, he does like commentary and stuff like that. And then in 2008, he officially leaves the WWE and retires. Well, until he goes over to TNA and becomes the TNA champion. But Samee, that's a story for a different day.
Oh man. What are your final thoughts on our sweet Mick Foley and the month that we've spent with him?
I have always been a huge fan of Mick Foley. Obviously, I wouldn't have agreed to do a 4-part episode on him if I wasn't a big fan. But getting to know him this well, even in doing this podcast, I feel like we still barely scratched the surface of every single aspect he's been able to bring. But I think in a lot of ways, it felt like the entire semester of Wrestling Academy, everything we've looked into, everything we've studied was all preparing us for this moment to see like every single aspect of what we've loved the most about wrestling, why we started this podcast to begin with, all of it is exemplified by Mick Foley in the career that he's had. This guy is constantly evolving. This guy is constantly able to make things work, is endlessly creative, does some of the greatest matches, some of the most violent spectacles. So he's a good technical wrestler. He's good at the hardcore stuff that we love too. He's good at promos. He's good at character work. He's good at believability. He's good at crafting crazy storylines. And above all, he's just a chill guy who's super nice. If you were ever to talk to him, he's very humble about his career, about his hits and his misses. And I did not have him as my number one wrestler. Forever, it's been The Rock. But I think after doing this 4-part retrospective on Mick Foley, I think Mick Foley's my favorite wrestler.
I don't know. I just feel like he's America's sweetheart.
But Samee, you got any final thoughts? We've done about all the faces of Foley, Mick Foley, his career, everything we studied. What have you learned?
Is there an obvious moment where, Mick went into business for himself, where he let his ego get the best of him? Because I feel like through all of our explorations of Mick, the only time he was being stubborn was when he was trying to make people believe in him. His whole philosophy behind wrestling and who he is within the wrestling community is just so beautiful. I mean, he really does just exemplify the saying, a rising tide raises all ships, or however that adage goes. He's got everybody's back because he's so good at being supportive. He's going up too. I think that's it's really unique and special.
I think that's how he was able to have the career that he had, is he just was always smart enough to be in the room with a lot of the biggest egos and learn, how can I make things work for myself, but then also not overshadow some of these other people and start to deal with the egos. And I think that allowed him to maneuver and get to have one of the coolest and most interesting careers in wrestling that we've seen up into this point. And I would argue it's probably up there for one of the most interesting careers in wrestling of all time.
So that was our month of Mick, and that was our first semester of Wrestling Academy.
That's right. We're going to take a couple weeks off, and then we'll be back with Summer School.
Oh, my.
Where we will be breaking down Tough Enough Season 1.
Ooh la la.
A reality TV show that came out 20 plus years ago. So we can't wait to dive in and really just find out who's tough enough and who's not. But we want to thank you for listening to Wrestling Academy, which is hosted, produced, and edited by me, Michael Classic, and you, Samee Junio. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube at Wrestling Academy Pod, or you can send us an email at wrestlingacademypod@gmail.com.
Follow, rate, and leave a positive review wherever you get your podcast, but check out Spotify, where we have Q&As or polls for every episode. And please, if you have any information on Ween Kid, go to our website, wrestlingacademy.university, to send in an anonymous tip or call the Ween Kid tip line and leave us a voicemail at 708-669-4512. That's 708-669-4512. Class is dismissed.
See you in summer school.